Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me right at the back? Everyone? Yes, perfectly. So good evening and welcome to this year's Future Leader Connect 2018 selections. A warm welcome to all the contestants who've come from afar, and they've already gone through one round of screening of their application forms, and they're here, and we are very excited to listen to them. We are extremely grateful to Shivnada University for hosting us, and in a while I'd request Dr. Professor Rupamanjari Ghosh to say a few words to us. But before we do that, as is customary in all British Council events where we have a lot of people, I'd ask you to take 2 minutes, or not even 2 minutes, 2 seconds to locate the nearest emergency exits in this room. So you can see one there, yes, and the one there. And you kind of had to decide, in the very unlikely event of anything going wrong, which one you're going to take, the easiest way out. But we hope that we're going to have a safe, enjoyable, and wonderful evening. So, Professor Ghosh, do you want to say a few words to us?
I'll be quite brief. We are also running a little late. So all I wanted to say is a very, very warm welcome to all of you. We are actually privileged to host this event from my British Council. They have been our partners in crime in many occasions. So I personally have been there, I don't know how many occasions in the British Council. So it's the first time that this event is happening at a university of this kind. This is the second edition of your this 8th event, right? So the way it's posed here, well, this inspired by India, you know. I couldn't have said it any better. And the Future Leaders Connect, so let the fun begin. My best wishes to the contestants today. If you are nervous, remember your panelists are more nervous because the filtering has already happened, and they have given on our plate 9 very good finalists. We have read your profiles. So to select 3 out of it, now 1 has been taken away to the audience, so it's even tougher for the panelists. So a very, very warm welcome to my students who are present here. You are not a passive participant. Thanks to Ritika, what she just explained, what was on the screen. You know, you actually would be choosing one of them. My special welcome to the panelists. I think you'd introduce them, so I'm not taking them names. Shivnada University, as everybody knows, is a multidisciplinary research-focused university. And we say in our mission that our mission is to create and develop and educate the path shapers of tomorrow. Path shaper may not be a British English word. My team objected when I wrote this, but you know, I bulldozed through, so my apology for that. But path shapers of tomorrow, everybody understands. That's our mission. And what we feel is important is really, it's written in our mission, if you read it, that we prepare them for ethical leadership of 21st century. So it's a challenging role, and we feel that some of our students are going to do it. So you'd be an inspiration to the next generation that are sitting in this. And I'm thankful to the British Council for organizing this event, and Ritika for bringing it to here. I'll fail in my duty if I don't thank some of my colleagues. Dr. Ram Sharma, who is not here, I think he's still working, and Rajiv and others, and who have made this so fruitful thing to come through. Anyway, I would not stand between you and the real event, so thank you all for being here. And in the end, we'll also have a chance to compare notes. Whatever the outcome, I hope you enjoy, and I am looking forward to the interaction with each one of you. So thank you very much, and welcome again from my side and on behalf of all of SNU. Thank you.
So to the panel members, because all of you do know Professor Ghosh, who is the Vice Chancellor of Shivnada University, but to the others, the few but important people who don't know, she's a physicist. So physics and science is her subject. She's a great academician and leader of academics and knowledge, and we're really privileged to have her being one of our panel members today. So that's going to be one of the privileges for us to work with Shivnada University. But I'd like all the students who've come and are sitting for about to come closer, please, because this is, as I said, as Dr. Ghosh mentioned, is going to be a very participative event. And what we do want you to do is, in every other event that you go to, you're told to put away your mobile phones, right? But we're going to ask you to take out your mobile phones, so that's going to be a little different. So can I, see you all taking out your mobile phones? Put them on silent, because we don't want them to get into the way of the participants when they speak. But if you open your browser and go to www.menti.com, most of you would have the passwords because you're students over here and Wi-Fi access. But for those of you who are our guests today, and that includes our participants, you can use the guest login of the Wi-Fi over here. And we will be webcasting today's event. So it's going to be live on web. So the audience here are the privileged ones who get to see and hear people face to face. But we have a wider audience who are going to drop in on today's events as we go along. Ahead of that, what I want you to do is to now kind of try and look, because you can see 3 words to describe what a future leader is. So this is a test one to see whether you've got into your Menti and whether you're able to put in your words. So can we see we've just got the one person in. So tech savvy young people from SNU, on your phones, put in the code on top 463060 if you've opened up Menti on your browsers. And when it comes back on again, we should see more number of people who've put in there how they describe their future leader. So can we have a go? Yes? Anybody who's finding it difficult to get in? Yes? You're able to put it in? Oh, no. Are you able to get, you're a guest, right? So have you got into the Wi-Fi? Okay, so the Wi-Fi will come on. You'll get a password. So you go in and select guest. It's going to prompt you to fill out a form. You'll have to give your mobile number. And if as soon as you put your mobile number in, you'll get a text message, which will give you this. But the students should be able to, yes. So 7 people have come up, I can see. And a little bit more. Let's give it a few more seconds. So if you want to get onto the action, let's see. Okay. So while we're doing this little exercise, I want to ask my colleague Tom Birtwistle to come and tell us a bit more about future leaders. And Tom is also on our panel. Before Tom joined the British Council India 1 year back, he was in South Africa. He was the assistant director for South Africa and director for Namibia. Tom is one person who's very innovative. He loves digital stuff. So if we're doing this today, taking this technology risk, part of it is inspired by Tom, who's so yeah, very good to say that. But his favorite project is called Digify, which uses digital technology to get young people to develop skills. So I'm going to call Tom on to tell us about future leaders. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all to what is the national final for Future Leaders Connect, as has been mentioned already. And I, just like Ritika, want to say a massive thank you to Shivnada University for an occasion like this. I don't think there's any more fitting place than a university to talk about future leaders and how young people are going to tackle the big challenges of tomorrow. This is where those big ideas and dreams come from. So what is Future Leaders Connect? It's a program, but it is also designed to be a movement too. And it's about binding together some of the most talented, the most visionary, and the most motivated young people who are working in the field of policy making all around the world. They are the people that are shaping both the discourse and the action that is being taken on some of the biggest challenges facing India, but other parts of the world too. And for the India National Edition, we've had over 500 applications. So these 9 finalists are the creme de la creme. of the Indian scene. So well done for making it this far. We're going to hear from each of them in the next hour or so, and they are the brightest young people working in the policy arena here in India. And if they are fortunate to be selected as one of the final 4 from tonight, they will be joining their peers, other policymakers from 15 countries around the world, to spend time on a 10-day programme in October at Cambridge University, at Cambridge University's Leadership Institute. They'll also spend time at the Houses of Parliament with MPs and leaders in UK government, and also with international global leaders too. So the result of tonight is a really big deal. So I know maybe there are a few nerves in this corner of the room especially, but enjoy it. This is your platform to say what you are most passionate about. So I wish you all very well. And the panel tonight are going to be judging on 3 criteria primarily. One is around leadership potential. The second is around each of these people's policy vision and what they want for the future. And the third, but very important aspect, is about how, if they are fortunate enough to go through onto this programme in the UK, how will they bring that experience, how will they share that experience here back in India with their peers, with their counterparts in the policy arena. So, as has been mentioned, as we can see, 70 people, that is brilliant, need to participate in this. The panel only selects 3 of the finalists, so there is a People's Champion too. So you need to be listening just as carefully as we are down at the front, and be thinking about that criteria set too, because there is some real power in your hands this evening. But before the presentations begin, I just want to wish the 9 finalists well for today. You're here because you are doing exceptional things already. As an organisation, as you can see next to me, we are 70 years old working in India, and we, whenever we get a chance to, say we have been inspired by India throughout that time. And what we really mean is we are inspired by people like you who are changing the world in front of them. So I wish you genuinely all the very best of luck this evening. And I believe, to give us a bit of a taste and a visual taste of what Future Leaders Connect is all about, there's a short video about last year's edition that you can just watch now. Good night. Thank you.
I applied for the program because it was such a great opportunity to meet great and amazing people from around the world and discuss problems that transcend borders and try to begin a conversation on the solutions.
I think Future Leaders Connect is not only going to help me strengthen my policy vision, but also give me that sense of self-confidence that I can see that through and turn this into a reality.
This is a really good program on how I can really start to make a difference in a country.
It is fascinating the amount of knowledge and experience I got to learn from all the participants, the experts and the speakers, but also to shape a clear path for intelligent policy making that is global and applicable for everybody.
It's about your skills, about having a more academic background that can help us create our public policies, about your connection with the government and maybe international governments, your experience of living abroad. And
for me, the best part of the entire 9 days were the workshops, and more than that, I really loved hearing people's stories. I mean, it was really amazing for me to see people who were so passionate about so many things that they were doing.
We were also challenged throughout this process. We were learning design thinking, we were restructuring our ideas about what leadership is.
Tactics of policy making class that I've had has really transformed the way I view policy making and how I feel that I should deliver some of my objectives.
That pitch session was a really amazing time to actually feel people's energy, and you see people getting really excited about their policy area and also asking you questions about yours. So it's really nice to be able to have that two-way conversation.
For me, it's the practical oriented theory that we've been taught during the program. It's an inspiration for you to move forward, to become that kind of leader in the future.
The best thing I learned from this program is to meet various leaders and also policymakers, so we can learn from there technically and also practically.
We got to meet the elders, the former UN leaders.
You should apply for Future Leaders Connect because you really get to meet policy experts and policy makers and will really understand why your topic's important.
This program has completely changed my life. I don't know where else I would have had this kind of access to go to the institutions that we went to meet the people that we did. It was a seminal moment in my year and in my life, and I'm so extremely grateful for it to the British Council.
No matter which particular field you are in, no matter what your interests are, if you want to contribute to the future of your country, the British Council Future Leaders Connect program has really given us the platform to make our voices heard.
I can't describe a better experience, professionally or personally.
We need brilliant minds. We are going to need as many people as possible driving this change. So do not give it second thoughts and just go for it.
If you have a story and if you want to be at the center of that story, apply for the Future Leaders Connect.
Yes, get started. Get started.
So in the next, the most important part is going to be around the rules. So I'd request the participants to pay very good attention to that. You will have 5 minutes to talk about your area of work. When you're through 4 minutes and there's just 1 minute left to go, we have 2 helpful colleagues who are going to hold up a green card and wave a little frantically at you. They're on 2 sides, so that in case you're looking each way and so caught up that you don't notice, we've kind of kept 2 of them. After that, they give you a 30 seconds warning, after which my colleague will press the bell. Do press the bell, Paru. And you'll hear a sound like that, okay? After which the judges might step in to stop you. So please don't go that far. Please do stop at your 5 minutes mark. And then you will get the panelists will ask you some questions, but the audience will also ask some questions. And again, on the Mentimeter, we'll give you prompts to send in your questions. When you give your questions, do put in your name, your year, and your subject area so that we are able to identify you, because the panel members will get to choose 1 question to ask on your behalf. And if you're the lucky person whose question is chosen, we've got some exciting giveaways at the end for the audience too. So as I said, this is going to be very, very participative, right? So that's how we're going to begin. So I'm just going to request, and just to tell you that we have 2 other panel members. We have Professor Partho Mukhopadhyay, and he's the Senior Fellow, Center of Policy Research. His area of interest is urbanization, infrastructure, and paths of development in India and China. And he's a doctorate in economics, also from New York, like Professor Ghosh. He's an advisor to the government in various areas. He's worked in urban development and poverty alleviation, railways, migration. It's a very, very long list of achievements, and we hope that he will come at the end during the prize distribution and tell us a bit more about himself. We're very interested in him. And our 4th panel member is Mr. Sunny Sen. He's a journalist and a business writer, and he's been with the Hindustan Times, the Indian Express, Financial Business Today, and with NDTV. But the most important part is that he's co-authored a book called Mantras for Success. So you might be interested in that. And that's what the greatest CEOs tell you how to win. So maybe after this you can read that. So he's also going to be with us today, judging you all. With that, I'll call upon Asha Jomis to come forward and give her presentation.
Can you hear me? Okay. Oh. Yes, and can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Governments around the world are facing budget deficits, lack of resources, expertise, and structured processes to address the growing needs of the citizens. This, combined with the rising political instability and decline in trust in public institutions, calls for an urgent need for innovation in good governance. We are the largest democracy in the world, and shouldn't we, as citizens, be able to do more than just vote every few years, sign petitions in change.org, or protest in the streets? Well, after doing all that, we set up governance innovation labs to realize our policy vision. Our policy vision is to engage citizens effectively in the public policy through a sustainable development model that guarantees gender equality. So the effective citizen engagement in public policy during the design, development, implementation, and evaluation ensures that we develop a strong participatory democracy. In the design stage, the citizens are engaged by collecting the needs from the citizens and their expectations from the government. In the development stage, we implement hackathons and crowdsourcing to develop solutions to address these citizen needs. In the implementation stage, we use the service aggregator model to deliver the public services through a network of citizen entrepreneurs. And finally, in the evaluation stage, the citizens get to say what they feel about these public services so that the feedback gets back to the system to improvise the system. In this policy vision, the role of the citizen is not a passive recipient of the public services, but rather an active co-producer of these public services. And the role of the government is that of an orchestrator that brings together the multiple stakeholders of public policy together to deliver the public services through coordination, management, and monitoring, making sure the control in the end lies within the government. We have been working in public policy for the last 4 years, and we started with the entrepreneurship policy because it leads to businesses and job opportunities for people, and we've specifically focused at women entrepreneurs. This is because in spite of a lot of policies for women entrepreneurs, we still see that the number of women entrepreneurs is very low. So we set up the Women's Business Incubation Program by providing them with co-working space, access to network, mentoring, policy awareness of these schemes, and hand-holding services. And then we realized that it is not just these factors that stop women from taking risk and becoming entrepreneurs. There is a broader socio, political, economic, and cultural things that prevent women from taking risk and venturing into entrepreneurship. So we expanded our work to governance innovation labs to develop sustainable policy solutions to address these gender issues. And in Governance Innovation Lab, we started by collecting the needs of the citizens. We asked 300 women what do they need, and with the help of data expert, we classified these needs into 12 verticals such as health, education, childcare, etc. And then we made a report on the best public policy practices across the world along with startup solutions to address these problems. In the development stage, we conducted a hackathon. Around 100 students from Kerala participated in this hackathon. The final stage of the hackathon was visualized like this and made it into a startup reality show, and 1,000 students voted for the teams. Now, following the success and media attention of the hackathon program, the government itself launched regular hackathons and idea contests for developing policy solutions for the social issues. Now, we develop our teams and send them to these competitions run by the government. And I'm extremely happy that one of our team members, Dharni, is here as a finalist today. Dharni worked with the Governance Innovation Labs with us and presented a solution for setting up feeding rooms. And that won the competition at the government, at Kerala State Youth Commission. So this is the model that we are working, and right now we have students across India working with us to develop policy solutions. In the implementation stage, we talked about the service aggregator model. It works perfectly with an OYO or Airbnb, but will it work with the government? Absolutely. Absolutely. In Kerala, we have done this through the Akshaya project, where the government delivers the public services through a network of citizen entrepreneurs. So that's what we are doing right now. And thank you for giving us the opportunity. 5 minutes is too short.
very
Yeah, to save the field.
Could I ask the first question, and it's to just find out a bit more about you as a leader.
Yes.
What has been the toughest leadership decision you've had to make in your career so far?
We always have to, we always get a lot of applications to work with us on the project that we said, and it's a paid internship, and we are a very bootstrapped government tech startup. So most of the time it is a very important and difficult choice to choose the right people to work with, because we ideally would like to choose everybody, but then we can't afford to have everybody on the team. So that is a very difficult leadership decision that I have to take, which is like very repetitive. Otherwise, I guess, saying no to people, that is the most emotionally difficult leadership decision, even when they are equally qualified. Yeah.
So, Asha, you have a question there about on access to media, but broadly speaking, whenever you talk about engaging people with government outside of the electoral process, there are obviously questions of power and class, about the people who can actually engage with platforms like yours. So what kind of things do you do to broaden the group of people to which your kinds of platforms have access?
Okay. Thank you for the question. So in the development stage, we mentioned about the hackathons and crowdsourcing. In that specific area, we can only work with people who have access to technologies or who can participate in hackathons or crowdsourcing exercises. So right now, we are engaging with the student community, and it's been working well. But we understand that engaging citizens have to happen across the social sector. So in the first section, where we are understanding the needs of the citizen, we go around and ask people what they need, and it's a basic survey. And in that survey, we ask citizens who are working or who are housewives or students. We cover everybody. But you rightly said that once it is the development stage, only people who have access to technology or who used to participate in hackathons will get the chance. But when we come to again taking the evaluation of the public policy, the surveys can actually go back to people who are receiving these services, and we can actually ask real citizens, as in like, how was your service at this particular government office today? Were you happy with the service? Because if you go to any private company, you would constantly be asked such questions, but then you don't get such opportunity to give response to the services from a government office at all. Yeah.
Just very quickly, actually you've answered one of my questions in a tangential way, and I think it was a very good presentation. The point is that when we are talking about policies,
yes,
success of a policy, I would like as a leader to be quantified. So one question that you have already answered, let me just point that out. You talked about a limitation of the approach because it's based on a particular kind of technology that is accessible to a particular class of people. So that was the first part. A related question is, how do you talk about success of the implementation of the policy? So the programmatic implementation of the policy, because we are talking about that. So I see a lot of programs, I don't see a coherent policy which you may like to quantify, how you measure the success of it.
So is the question, how do you measure the success of our policy? Yeah. So when we started with the women entrepreneurship program, we looked at the number of women we can bring into entrepreneurship after identifying their problems they faced for setting up the business. So we quantified that by the number of women entrepreneurs we were able to help, and also by the number of people who would actually take, say for example, very specific example, number of people who would take the Mudra loan. because that was a specific policy which was designed to get more women into entrepreneurship. So then we wanted to measure how much people took the scheme before we started the program, and then we worked with a particular partner, Union Bank, to see how much people started taking this Mudra loan after we came into picture and helped them with the hand-holding services. So it's just numbers, yeah, and specific policy. Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
It's hardly, we started the business incubation program around 4 years ago. The governance innovation program started like a year ago, only when we realized that, you know, it's just not the problem with the government not being aware of the government schemes is preventing the women from starting up the business or taking the risk. There are a lot of other reasons why women do not take risk, and that's when we started looking at the gender perspective of the program.
Right, right. So I wanted to ask you that question because have you thought of how you would scale this program beyond Kerala or some pockets in Kerala? And
yes, sir. So currently we are working on establishing partnerships because that is also. Can I answer that question? Yeah. So we are looking at partnerships right now because, as I clearly mentioned, we have developed policy solutions for addressing the issues. But the success, like Madam has mentioned, lies in the large-scale implementation, and I have to measure it at some point. So we have to identify the citizen entrepreneurs who would deliver these public policies, public services. So right now we are making partnerships with academic institutions, development agencies, NGOs to scale this program. And one of the programs we did was, doing renovation for a government school project. And for that, one corporate CSR program collaborated with us. And so we are finding corporate partnerships in the CSR vertical, and then we are working with NGOs. We are currently working with UNDP's Governance Innovation Labs. They have the exact same program which started around like 2013, where it's a collaborative place where you do experiments to see what works and what doesn't work, because it completely is different from one country to another country. So based on those experiments, we are partnering, associating with them for conference that's coming in 2018 in Turkey in December, I guess. Yeah. So we are reaching out to international partners, and they're interested in the work because this is pretty new, and the government tech space is kind of starting to function in India. So yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So our next contestant is Dakshita Garwal, and she's going to talk.
Good evening. Women empowerment and concerns are majorly talked on global platforms at a large level. But it's high time when we stop talking hypothetically and start focusing on real impact-creating process. We need to think a step beyond. We need to think about female leadership. We need to think about ways where self-sustainability of women can be achieved by developing female leadership at the level of educational institutions. I am elected president of my university and working with an organization, Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, and I'll be discussing the policy ideas and observation and initiatives that we have taken. So talking about an overview of our country with respect to female representation, there is only 12% female representation in an important political institution called Lok Sabha. Only 10% female representation in Rajya Sabha. Despite of having 65% plus literacy rate, female literacy rate in our country, only 17% out of it are turning up for GDP contribution. In UNDP's Gender Gap Index, we stand 136 on 186 global countries. I mean, that is huge and shows that we are extremely lagging behind when it comes to female representation. So what is our policy idea? It is that there is almost 46% of higher education enrollment of females in our country. If this 46% of females get a spark of leadership and initiation in themselves, there could be a huge change in the statistics that I just mentioned. And we could portray India as an inclusive country where female leaders are seen as mass leaders. Am I not audible?
You are.
Okay, thank you so much. So, we need to see that where the actual problem lies when it comes to female leadership. We have been in complete interaction with females at the ground level, at the rural levels. And I'll tell you that the basic concerns that hit a woman when she's offered the platform of leadership is, first one are the individual concerns, the second one are the background concerns, and comes the circumstantial concerns. So we have to work on ground level to combat these concerns first. So the first step in that is interaction. I'm responsible for Madhya Pradesh, and that's why we have interaction in about 1600 plus education institutions with females. We conducted a sample survey on about 3000 plus females in education institutions about opportunities in leadership and employment. The report is under publishing, but we are completely working on the circumstances, the observations we have. The next one is making her fearless. That is the most important component of every leader. To make her fearless, we launched a program called Mission Sahasi, where we have already involved 5,000 plus females for self-defense training and, increasing her boost. The next is giving her clarity. We have launched a program called Anubhuti, where 1,000 plus female leaders from Madhya Pradesh were exposed to rural fronts to interact with the women of rural areas and take the responsibility, the fire of initiation in themselves. And then comes the platform. We seek 50% reservation in the student union elections held in Madhya Pradesh, and we were highly successful in bringing out 3,500 female leaders from these 1,600 plus educational institutions of 52 districts of Madhya Pradesh, out of which 21 are tribal ones. So this is the whole idea of policy, where we want to bring out activism, female activism from the educational institutions, that they start developing the race, they start developing the vision from the education institutions itself. They get that confidence so that they can take up initiatives, social initiatives in future. We want to take this 3,500 leaders that came out of elections to another 3,500 villages in the next coming year, so that we have a good clan of female leaders in our country. There are almost 52,000 plus villages in Madhya Pradesh specifically, but in the first half we will be targeting the ones with these female leaders itself. So this is the idea of the policy. We will be involving the district administration, the women self-help groups, the panchayats, even British Council can be a member in this. So we want that interaction starts at the basic level, because until and unless it starts at the base, a sustainable and inclusive structure at the top cannot be created. So the next 5-year vision is that there is proper female representation, at least 1/3 of female representation in every field, whether it is economic, political, entrepreneurship, sports, whatever. But there are female faces, female leaders, and they develop. So women are already contributing too much to the society, and as Madiba says, that you empower a woman, you empower a society. And until and unless the sustainable and inclusive structure is created, the basic need of this creation is that women come into prominent leadership roles, and she's head woman, and there's almost nothing where she cannot succeed. Thank you so much.
You want to ask?
So, Dakshita, thank you for that. 3 quick questions. First, you mentioned about taking your 3,500 people to the villages. Now, given our governance structures, 1/3 of our elected leadership in villages are women. I don't know, that's 1/3 of half in. So, how do you sense the interaction between the elected leadership, which already exists, and the structure that you are coming through?
So it's highly disappointing. There is 1/3 of representation, female representation in local level elections that we call sarpanch and panch in India. So it's highly disappointing because they are playing only dummy roles, and we often hear words like sarpanch pati, parshad pati, vidhayak pati. They are playing proxy roles to the male family members. And the interaction is that the district level administration sometimes do not listen to these females because they have not been ever involved in the decision making process. So we want that conviction comes in the female leaders. They were never given decision making opportunities even in their homes, but suddenly the reservation thing came up in the direct elections, and the already existing political faces planted their female members in front. They are the ones, and then they are ruling. So this is a big battle. This is a big battle we need to confront, and that's why we are talking about working on ground level, so that in future we won't face the crisis of female leadership even at the rural fronts, because that's where the actual development has to start.
The other thing that I'd like you to reflect on is you work in a partisan organization, not a particular. The nature of the organization is it's a party-based organization. So how does that nature of the organization affect your ability to be inclusive, in the sense that a number of your people may or may not share your political views? So how do you engage or reach with people, given the fact that you belong to a partisan organization?
I guess there are some issues where we all unite, and women empowerment, women leadership is one of them. I was a part of British High Commission's Future Leaders Politicians program to this year, and we were a cross-party delegation over there. We had a really good interaction with each other, and I think they all unite on this story. I mean, I really appreciate anyone working on this notion of developing female leadership, whether it is, and yes, if anybody works and they want to come in front in support of us, and if they require our support, it's completely open. I mean, it's just a platform. It's just about choosing a platform and working for a common cause altogether.
Can I relay a question from the audience, from Pankaj, about the females who may benefit from the kind of initiative that you're looking at, who may not be in an educational institution already? How would you involve them in the future?
See, talking about women leadership, talking about women empowerment, it's a very broad thing, and it has to start from somewhere. Whether it has to start from the uneducated sector of the society or at the educated one. So when we looked at the figures, there's almost 46% enrollment in higher education. So we thought, why not start from here? I mean, these women will be highly successful in reaching the downward society. I do not deny that women who are not educated cannot be good leaders. They definitely can, but somebody has to reach them. So and the structure has to be created. I mean, it has to start from somewhere. So.
Thank you. It is quite inspiring. One very short kind of a half comment, but I want to hear your comment. When you think of affirmative action, can you think of anything other than just reservation?
Yes. I mean,
particularly in this issue, because this is a contentious thing. And the related question, actually, can you think of whatever your learnings from this very meaningful thing that you're doing? Is there anything for a vision for global change? Because these kind of problems are all over the world. So do you have any vision for a global change in this? So
the basic vision is that the work has to start at the ground level. I mean, every country frames policies for women empowerment, emphasizing on certain issues that are of societal concerns with respect to women. But the problem is that the policies do not reach to the bottom. I was in support of reservation because Rwanda is a country where the highest leadership in terms of political factors is there, and they have 50% reservation in their political seats. So they are highly contributing. I mean, reservation is one man. I don't say that reservation should exist forever. When they are, they have to come in some or other manner. They have to be motivated. So reservation gives that thing. And reservation, if given directly in the political sector, you are making them the direct face through reservation. Problems like that arise as the question that yes, proxies may be created. So the global vision is that the work has to start at the ground level. The conviction, the vision to create a female leader should begin from the rural fronts, from the ground level.
One question. You said that it should start from the ground level, and especially in rural India. But you also mentioned that in rural India, most of the women punches are actually proxy faces. But if the family is not ready to empower a woman, how do you expect the child to be empowered, a girl child to be empowered?
Yes. mentioning the concerns which hit a woman when leadership platform is addressed to. While I was speaking, I mentioned 3 concerns which hit a woman when she's offered the platform of leadership. One of them was individual concern. The individual concern is the thing, because she is being treated as the second gen. She was never involved in the decision making thing right from the family itself. So that's why when they come to educational institutions, we want to interact with them. We want to tell them. We want to go to their, take the message to their families. That yes, we can do that. I mean, yes, we cannot completely change the notion of the society so suddenly, but we have to reach people somewhere. We have to catch them somewhere and tell them that take this message forward and propagate it. I mean, you have to stand if you want to take leadership forward, it's highly necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for those who are asking the questions. Do remember to put your name in so that we can identify you. But some of the questions you may not have wanted to put your name in. I can get that, yes. Okay. The next person on is Devashish Dhar.
Am I audible? Is it working? Yeah. All right, great. So good evening everyone, my name is Devashish Dhar. I work as a public policy specialist in the office of the Vice Chairman and CEO, Niti Aayog. I'm a little more nervous than usual because Dr. Patha is sitting here. I'm going to talk about urbanization. Well, let's start with some facts. By 2050, 70% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. By 2030, 600 million Indians, almost twice the size of the US, would be living in urban areas. As of now, Indian cities contribute 2/3 of the GDP and 90% of the tax revenues. And lastly, depending upon which definition we choose, the rate of urbanization in India could range from 26% to 78%. So essentially, we do not know the scale of urbanization in India. We are not aware about what are the challenges associated with it. And the policy vision and the change I want to see over the next few years is that expand the informed understanding about urbanization, its constituent paradigms, particularly in developing countries. What are urban paradigms? Urban paradigms are models for managing urbanization. The more popular ones that we keep hearing is sustainable cities, livable cities. The lesser popular ones are just cities, safe cities, inclusive cities, competitive cities, and so on. So there are 4 or 5 factors that I want to highlight about my vision. First, it's a soft vision. It is suggestive in nature. It is not prescriptive in nature. Second, it is about addressing a challenge that India and the developing world at large is facing for the first time, which is urbanization and at this scale. Third, it is about sensitizing all the stakeholders. And lastly, it's about trusting the stakeholders. So essentially, there is an information and awareness gap about urbanization and the related urban paradigms. And there are 5 ways in which I want to contribute to my policy vision. First is policy making at the national level. Being part of Niti Aayog, I've been part of core team that drafted India's first 3-year action agenda, India's strategy document, India's vision document, which cumulatively have sort of succeeded the 12th 5-year plan. And there are other couple of schemes that I can't be speaking in public, but I have tried my best to sort of expand the understanding on urbanization at large through these documents, and I intend to keep doing so in one way or the other. Second is advocacy. I've been in the government long enough, like just not too long, but fairly long enough to know that government also needs some nudge and pressure from the outside. I try and write for at least half a dozen national dailies on range of policy issues, including urbanization in cities. Some of my last few articles include why cities should be investment destinations, why India needs a national urban policy, and how can we increase public spaces in Indian cities. I intend to keep doing so and keep spreading the message across different nuanced aspects of urbanization. Third is about politics. A couple of years ago, I helped BJP sort of incubate and execute a political training course called Prakash Ratra and Netrutva Sadhana. There are 2 courses, and I just helped Indian National Congress execute Future of India Fellowship, and I fought tooth and nail to get urbanization included in both these curriculum. It's very difficult. They sort of romanticize villages, which puts cities at sort of a disadvantage. Second is about manifesto writing. In 2014, I had a chance to work on PM Modi's manifesto, and in 2019, I intend to work on manifesto of either of the leading national political parties. And these documents are sort of become go-to documents when any party comes to power, and I intend to contribute to that. Third is partnership, and perhaps this is the most important part. because of my decade-long career in policy making, I'm part of organizations and networks which are engaged in meaningful policy work, particularly urbanization. Niti Aayog, College of Business Studies, Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Takshashila Institution, range of private sector enterprises, civil society organization, Yunqing Academy, Global Public Policy Network, and so on. If I'm selected, I intend to connect my future FLC cohort to this part of my network, and I also intend to keep working to this network of mine to work on urbanization related issues. And lastly, yes, sure, I'll be done before that. And lastly, it's about the spin-off activities. I have some idea of the activities that I would want to undertake. First is I propose that we sort of draft a new alternate urban vision within the FLC cohort. If other people are interested, we can also have an urban conclave in different countries over the next few years. We could also start a hashtag New Urban as a repository of urban case studies. And I also propose that within FLC cohort, we can take an attempt at devising an information, education, communication campaign focused on urbanization related issues. So essentially, the problem is about awareness, about the more nuanced aspects of urbanization, and it's just not Delhi, Bombay. Let's look at the smaller, like hundreds of towns that we have in India. And I attempt to sort of solve this problem through policy making at the national level, advocacy, partnership, politics, and spin-off activities. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being a patient audience. Thank you.
Devashish, what in your view is the purpose of urbanization?
Sorry, sir?
What is in your view is the purpose of urbanization?
The purpose of urbanization, I see it as a natural phenomenon in terms of agglomeration of economies, generator of economic growth, and at a more nuanced aspect, I see that because there is such an agglomeration of people and culture and society and industries, I see that we move forward on values, which I see is the last outcome of cities. Whereas the more basic, if you imagine as a Maslow's hierarchy, the infrastructure, creation, better lifestyle, education, economic growth would be at the bottom, but having a fulfilling life, having more liberal values, having a more sort of livable lifestyle would be the sort of end goals to cities.
So when you said that at the beginning, you spoke about how just cities, safe cities, inclusive cities were less popular than smart cities and livable cities. Yeah. Could you reflect on why that may be the case, if values seem to be the driver that you're looking at?
Well, so that's why, sir, I said that it's about that I intend to sort of focus this part on the developing countries, because in the West, they're sort of moving on to this. So if you see Canada's and Australia's and Western and Southern Europe's definition of cities, they're sort of moving on to those nuanced aspects. Whereas in Delhi, now Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs is doing a city on livability index, and I've sort of been associated with all the three organizations working on it, and it's a very good study. But I think it would be a very good study to start the dialogue on it, and Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore might just do okay on it, but other towns, I'm from Lucknow, so I'm sure we're going to fare poorly on that one. But I think that we sort of ought to move on that, but first we need to focus on those basic foundation of Maslow, infrastructure creation, economic growth, and so on. Sorry.
No, so urbanization has its own fallout. So one of the biggest fallout is growing population in cities, and it becomes unsustainable after a point of time. Infrastructure becomes so cramped that it becomes very unstable at a point of time. Absolutely. And so does pollution and everything else associated with it.
Absolutely.
It hampers the green impact, the effect of that city. What are your thoughts on sustainable urbanization, and is that possible in a country like India? And how do you associate it to be cost efficient so that a country like India can implement that rather than just doing urbanization?
Absolutely. So when I said the more nuanced aspect in urban paradigms, I meant that we ought to go beyond infrastructure creation, which is the traditional understanding. And the point is that urbanization is going to happen. There's no way out of it. And what happens is usually I think it's sort of an downward U curve. So when you're going up, the unsustainability, the pollution, all the fallouts will sort of increase. But my personal estimate, I do not have an empirical support to that. We are at $1,800 per capita. Once we sort of breach $600 per capita, we're going to sort of see sort of stabilization in terms of what we are doing in cities. And there are a lot of cities saying that around 49 clusters in India will be contributing to around 2/3 of India's GDP growth until 2025. So if that happens, it goes with the assumption there are a lot of smaller city clusters that are going to work out, and people are this sort of migration that happens, rural to urban migration, will not only happen to those mega cities and metropolitan cities, so to say. It will be sort of more gradual and distributed across the country. So but that would take at least 10-15 years. I mean, Beijing, Shanghai is a classic example, and I'm talking about sort of tripling the GDP. So that has to take at least 15 years, 18 years. That would take that even with the double-digit growth. Yeah.
As you were saying, urbanization is happening, and it's happening not just in India, all over the world, Absolutely. Including many of the countries who are also running events like this. So if you were to be going to the UK, how would you mobilize this agenda as an international issue?
Right. So there are two, three things that really stand out about UK. First is when I wrote about that why cities should be investment destinations. London, Manchester, they're doing really good work in terms of cities attracting investments. That is one thing. And in India, it would be a little difficult until mayors have powers, but I guess we will get there eventually. Second is about the universities such as LSE and Oxford. They're doing some really good work on urbanization. LSE, I'm forgetting the name, but there's a city lab in LSE, and I've met a couple of people in Beijing, in India also, who are working at that center, and they're doing really meaningful work there. So I intend to sort of connect them to, because my perception of government is sort of skewed because Niti Aayog is relatively more agile as compared to other government organizations, and as soon as we sort of take the proposal that, why don't the urbanization vertical work with this university, they're more than happy to do so. I mean, I've studied in Singapore people reach out to me, and there are a lot of cities focusing on urbanization. There's a lot of capacity building programs, and it is one of the Niti Aayog's most popular programs. Basically, they got 7 states, and there was a capacity building on urbanization, and wow, states took off, and they had their own MOUs with Singapore. So it was really good work actually. So basically there could be a lot of mobilization, and there's also a behavioral nudge unit, and I believe in the UK Parliament, and I have a very dear friend working there, and I think that's doing fabulously good work because we are hardly exploiting behavioral economics there. Yeah, thank you. That would be all. Oh, thank you so much.
Dharini Suresh. Dharini, welcome.
We all know that smoking is injurious to health and causes cancer. But how many of us know that the usage of newspapers, old clothes, polythene bags as menstrual absorbent materials are also injurious to health and cause cancer? Shockingly, around 88% of Indian women do not. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A 2011 survey shows that India has one of the lowest figures in sanitary napkin usage in the world. While Japan has 100%, China a 64%, we just have a paltry 12%. UNICEF reports that 500 million women and girls around the world do not have access to adequate sanitation facilities, affordable products, and the knowledge to practice menstrual hygiene. Due to these factors, women often resort to extreme unhygienic practices that cause them stress and many reproductive tract infections. And these infections lead to infertility, pregnancy issues, increased susceptibility to sexually transmitted diseases, and cancer. Some girls in Africa, out of desperation, even engage in transactional sex for sanitary napkins. So we realize that there is a need to address this issue, but often it doesn't find its place in research or policy making. And that is why my aim is to achieve absolute menstrual hygiene management in India. In order to realize this vision of every woman having access to affordable sanitary products and to practice
healthy menstrual hygiene, I hope to adopt a 5-point action plan. 1. Educating students in middle school itself about the importance of practicing menstrual hygiene. This will also bust the common myths and beliefs surrounding menstruation for both the genders. 2. Encouraging student entrepreneurship in schools. As poverty is one of the root causes of the limited access to resources, this idea of earning while learning will encourage students to go to school as well as appeal to their families, because now they are given a means of livelihood. So here students will be trained to manufacture sanitary products at school and taught how to sell it to their friends and community. This ensures 4 things. 1. Easy access and continuous supply of sanitary products in the neighborhood. 2. A grassroots level of decentralized distribution. 3. As young boys are also encouraged to participate in this program, this helps in destigmatizing menstruation and sensitize them at a very early age to menstruation and understand that it is a normal and healthy process. And finally, the empowerment of these young children in becoming change agents for their community. Third, conducting awareness campaigns targeting the male population and panchayat heads. As India is mostly a patriarchal society, we need to sensitize men to the needs and requirements of a menstruating woman so as to enable them to practice inclusiveness in their daily lives. 4. Setting up a pan-Indian system of distribution of free or highly subsidized sanitary pads through outlets that are solely run by women. This ensures efficient distribution and easy accessibility. And finally, for the protection of our environment and the health of sanitary waste pickers, manufacturers will include a separate disposal colored bag so as to enable the proper disposal of soiled napkins and for the easy identification of sanitary waste by the waste pickers. Incinerators will also be installed in major public spaces for its safe disposal. So by adopting this 5-point action plan, we will be able to positively impact the menstrual and reproductive health of a woman. It can also lead to gender equality, population control, and contribute to the socio-economic development of any country. I believe that 5 years from now, with the adoption of the right set of policies and measures, with the coming together of policymakers and a group of committed individuals, we will be able to make significant progress in community health and achieve absolute menstrual hygiene management. In this era of technological advancements, we are sending people to moon and also seeking for life on Mars. Amidst all these stellar achievements, let's also strive for ensuring and safeguarding the dignity and health of every woman, which is roughly half of the world's population. Thank you.
Very nice. I think the action plan we understand. How far are you in the implementation agenda? Meaning, and so while you talk about it, what my question is actually, what do you anticipate to be the major hurdle in this action plan? The major hurdle. So as a leader, how would you overcome that? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. Ma'am, I've started a company, so that is a social enterprise. So right now, it's just 7 months into it. So I just now graduated from college and I've directly started this company. So the thing is that at the first level, at the normal level right now, we are at the first step, that is educating students in the middle school. And I'm from Kerala, and I have gone to many schools over there and conducted classes and even got more partnerships with other schools for that. So that is my existing stage. Now the next question as to what is a hurdle that we'll be having. The first thing is that, the myth and taboo surrounding menstruation is definitely there. So even now when I go and speak to government officials about setting out sanitary vending machines in public spaces, we can see them cringe because they are also men. But we understand, but the fact is that breaking the communication barrier and getting across where we can both sit together and talk, that is a barrier for the opposite side. So I think that even though that barrier is there, we can definitely break it, because we need to continuously and consistently pursue them, because soon they will become comfortable by listening and hearing again and again. So the hurdle is basically communicating, because this is a very squeamish topic for a normal conversation.
Well, I mean, I think you've just tapped into what a lot of the audience are asking around this taboo status that this may have, and you've mentioned how you experience it at government level, but particularly in the kind of younger groups, are there very specific ways you would try and tackle socializing the issue?
Like tackling this?
Tackling the issue with young people, socializing this as a normal thing that happens to women.
Yeah, that inhibition is generally there, because they are in their pre-teens and they are in their teenagers. So even when we went to the school, we could find that like boys and girls are laughing at the topic. It's normal, it's natural, we can understand that. So sometimes by promoting this communication with both the genders together, it actually ensures that even the other side, that is the men, also understand what they are undergoing through it. So they are able to develop a more empathetic and a wholesome overview for this. So that perspective is what helps us in getting across this barrier and in this communication. But yes, initially when we communicate to them, it is a discomfort is there, but then generally through our sessions, there are ice-breaking sessions are there. So they are able to understand that at the end of it. So I think that is a very measurable impact when we have this attitude change from both the genders.
So, in your note, you talked about 65% of women in Kenya. 65% of women in Kenya cannot afford it.
No, 65%.
5% of women in Kenya can't afford sanitary pads.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, in
so, what is the comparable number in India? Is there a number out there?
Yeah, like from the existing statistics, as I told earlier, only 12% are using sanitary napkins.
Right. So that means that affordability is a big barrier in usage, right? How do you ensure that your policy captures the affordability aspect, and how do you convince the government to take a measure which will do that?
In subsidizing the products?
As in, depends on how do you subsidy is just one part of it. Maybe set up government aided manufacturing units or whatever. There are a bunch of things.
Our government has already started, but so it's not really in an advanced stage, but the Swachh Bharat mission has recognized the importance of MHN. So right now in the financial barrier, what we can see is that affordability can be integrated when we go for a mass level scale. But initially, it will be difficult to break even. That is a fact we have to acknowledge. But through collaborations and partnerships with relevant NGOs and through corporate social responsibility funding, so we will be able to carry on till the break even stage. So affordability and accessibility is our main keywords. So we need to integrate that into our process. So one main factor that we need to look into is getting the funds from these relevant sectors so that we can carry on this we can integrate this affordable factor in the pricing of the product.
Right. Your 5-point agenda didn't put affordability as the biggest.
Yes, but the thing is that it's a little bit more, it goes into the pricing of the system as well. So it will include the CSR funding, the corporate sector, the NGOs, relevant NGOs. It's through partnerships and collaborations that we can get through it.
Quick question. How many schools were you denied entry to do your program?
I was not, I can't say denied entry. They just said, we'll call you later, but I don't take that no, because we will be pursuing it. So I have around 6 schools are there, 7 schools are there which said that we don't need it right now, that syllabus is already there, but the fact is it's being taught in 10th standard, but that's pretty late. It's a case of delayed delivery of vital information for these students.
How many schools have you been engaging with already?
I've gone through around 25 schools.
And what is your funding plan? How are you raising funding for your activities?
As I told earlier, it will be mostly through collaborations. and partnerships with NGOs, CSR funding, corporate social response funding, and we are also looking into crowdfunding sector as well, through a means of crowdfunding for the initial stage.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for all those who keep asking questions. We're very happy. We get about 23 questions. So please keep them coming and please remember to give your names. The next person that we have is Gaurav Somvanshi. All the best.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I am Gaurav Somvanshi. I am a graduate from IIM Lucknow and currently working as a member of Chhattisgarh Direct Benefit Transfer Cell. And I thank you so much for this opportunity. Now, identity. Such a simple word that most of us take for granted. In fact, in India, before Aadhaar, we had 18 different identity cards that were considered nationally valid, like the passport, PAN card, voting card, driving license, etc. But how many Indians really had any of these 18 cards? Well, to give you a perspective, around 40 to 45% children born in India today don't even have a birth certificate. Okay. Let's take a look at the global context now. The Human Rights Charter acknowledges identity as a basic human right. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals also envisions that identity should be made available to every citizen by 2030. Yet, there are 1.5 billion people in the world who do not have an identity that they can prove. They are simply invisible to the state. What are the consequences of this invisibilization? Or rather, why do you need an identity in the first place? Well, you need an identity to avail basic services like health and education. Identity can make the government or state accountable to you. Identity is necessary to avail basic financial services like banking and credit. Identity has also been proven to be important to reduce the gender inequity gap because it is the women and the weaker sections who usually face the brunt of losing out on an identity. Thankfully, despite all its problems, India has found a partial solution in the form of a unique national identifier that we call Aadhaar. In the words of Mr. Nandan Nilekani, Aadhaar has made millions of Indian citizens visible to the state for the first time. Yet, in recent times, there has been a lot of outrage and even memes against Aadhaar, and some of that criticism is indeed valid. So the question that confronts us today is, how do you ensure a unique identity for everyone? And in the next step, how do you ensure that this unique identity is used to its fullest potential to radically transform the landscape of public service delivery in India? Because Aadhaar is being used to address some of the problems and also deliver the services that I mentioned previously. Yet it can do a lot more and it can do it in a lot better way. So where do we seek the answer of these questions? Well, I believe the answer to these questions could come from the marriage of policies and emerging technologies. Why policy? Well, as the American political scientist Harold Lasswell said, public policy is nothing but who gets what, when and how. Now, if the government officials and the State Department can decide upon who and what, then the emerging technologies like blockchain could help in the when and how. And it could create a positive feedback loop wherein the technology boosts the ability of the bureaucrats who in turn place more faith in these technologies. So, my first policy recommendation is this. A unique identity for every individual should be treated as a national public good. Secondly, in order to safeguard citizen data, currently in India we are following a heavily privacy by consent framework. However, I believe that along with privacy by consent, which is necessary, we also need to follow a privacy by design framework wherein the state or any other data holder for that matter is itself made more accountable and bound by design, laws and IT architecture to prevent any breaches in data. In order to march ahead on this road, we need to conduct as many pilot studies as possible in blockchain and other emerging technologies in all domains of public services like healthcare, land records management, data exchange between departments, taxation, etc. And by conducting impact assessment tests and studies in scalability, the policymakers can then design policies which can help the state officials in actually implementing these technologies. And there is a real possibility that these technologies could really bring in a proactive e-governance. If you think that this sounds too good to be true, then let me tell you and let me assure you that we are in the middle of doing something similar at Chhattisgarh. And we will have to take this technological leap because, as the management guru Oren Harari has said, the electric light did not come from the continuous improvement of candles. So, again to summarize my vision, identity should be made available to every citizen on the planet, and with that as the foundation and with the help of emerging technologies, we should make the government of the states responsible, accountable and capable to deliver all the public services
to the citizen without compromising on privacy and security. I believe that I can live up to this vision. I am a member of Chhattisgarh State DBT cell whose efforts have been appreciated by the Cabinet Secretariat. I have assisted in framing essential policies like the State Aadhaar Act. I am a Leaders in Innovation Fellow with Royal Academy of Engineering UK and a member of African Blockchain Alliance. I was also a speaker at London Science Summit 2018 where I spoke on blockchain for public governance. I believe that the Future Leaders Connect program can help me immensely in learning the necessary skill sets and also creating a network of like-minded individuals who can help me in realizing my vision. Thank you so much.
Gaurav,
yes, sir.
Is there any demand for privacy by design? Why would government want to be accountable?
Yes. So, there are two stakeholders involved here. One is the citizen himself and then there's the government. So, it is very possible in a policy framework that two stakeholders would not be in an alignment of interest. So, that's why a policy by consent, what it basically does is that it relegates the responsibility upon the individual, because the data holder, not just the government but any data holder, can simply shake their hands off by saying that you had given the consent for so and so. However, privacy by design is not a new concept. It came way back in 1990s when Dr. Ann Kubikian introduced the concept, and in 2010 it was also passed in the resolution that this should be the baseline. Yet you must be aware that in previous week there was a data protection bill submitted by a committee headed by Justice Sri Krishnan, and it was submitted to MIT. So that is a basically personal data protection bill, something of equivalent to the GDPR and other data protection laws which 89 countries already have. Even in that you would see that privacy by design is not mentioned or mentioned in just passing indirectly, and the focus is given upon how to improve the consent, how to make the citizen more informed about what consent is giving. But we should not treat it as a mutually exclusive binary. That would be a big mistake and folly on our part, and the citizens need to be made aware that they can ask for this right. It could be a possibility, whether or not the states may really like it or not.
And what do you think the limitations should be for identity data, and particularly its integration into government site? So government be able to see huge amounts of information about its citizens.
Yeah, and I believe I can also understand the reason why you're asking the question, because the identity program was scrapped by the UK. Yeah. So, but there's a brilliant research paper by Mr. Professor Andrew Martin, where he outlines 3 reasons why it was. So, I'll answer my question through coming from that angle. So, if you look at the research paper everywhere, the success of an identity basically boils down to its perception, and I'm not kidding. It's not about the technology, but it's more about the perception. So, in UK what happened was that it was introduced in 2001. In 2006 the tide started changing, and there were 3 reasons that brought it down. There were organizational complexity, because different departments did not know what to do with this number. Then second was that the banks are not informed that how you're going to use this number. And the third was of course the political battles. But there was also an additional paper by Mr. Edgar Whitley. He is at London School of Economics. He has written that this happened because the introduction of the bill was happened to the Home Department. So it brings in connotations of refugees, immigrants and border security. So which department introduced the bill also tends to have a focus upon what does it. So similarly in India, when it comes to Aadhaar, the government really needs to build up credibility, and that would require a high level of transparency regarding what is the data we are taking from you and what are we going to do with that data. That has to be communicated directly. Given that, even if that is communicated, I believe that India is such a demographically diverse country with, there are pretty much sensitive demographics involved here. In that case, there has to be certain limitations in collections of data. But at the same time, that limitation is not due to the concern of data breaching, but because the research has already proved that it's a myth when you believe that less data collected is equal to more privacy. That equation doesn't work. We already have the technology and frameworks in place to make this work.
Actually, you answered the question that I had in this. It is quite nice. Just a small comment that, technology works within social frameworks.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So I think implementation of technology is often easier.
Yeah.
Changing a social framework in a country like India is your major problem.
Absolutely.
I did not hear anything on that, so if you could elaborate on it.
Yes. So even today, when they were implementing Aadhaar, they chose a district in the northern Maharashtra and they conducted some basic studies regarding what is the perception of the person actually who is giving the data. So at least until 5 years ago, the perception was really positive. The citizens want an identity. If we are going to believe the media hype and we are going to just forward memes on the WhatsApp regarding how bad and Aadhaar is and what is the mistake committed by some director of some committee. So if that is going to shape our discourse, then the collateral damage is going to happen to the people who actually need an identity. So we need to create a line of communication wherein the concerns of the people who actually need an identity, who don't get a passport and PAN card and driving license like we do, what about those people? Because if that can be communicated to the mainstream propaganda, then that can really percolate into the state policy. I believe that is something I should have covered.
Could I ask one question?
Yes. Sure.
Sorry, yeah. So it's actually from the audience, which is around how you visualize blockchain technology fitting into this system, particularly around cryptocurrencies.
Okay. So whenever you hear about blockchain, and you tend to associate with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. However, I would request you to not do that, because if a certain website is a Bitcoin, then the internet is the blockchain. So right now we are at the stage of already identifying use cases where blockchain can actually work. Of course, there's another paper by Mr. Edgar Whitley where he says that policymakers make a huge mistake when they become too much enthusiastic about a technology and just haphazardly go on implementing it. So that is why the pilot studies come in. The pilot studies are there to identify the perfect use cases, and each use case has a customized solution that would fit to it. For example, in health records, you would need a completely different architecture, and in land record management, you would again need something different. So, as I said, cryptocurrency should not be seen at all when you are looking at blockchain, and you should only be looking at the functional use case that is in your hand. That is there a problem that this blockchain could solve? If not, let's forget blockchain, let's do it in the old way. But if there is, then let's have pilot studies. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Kumar Kunal Jha. Welcome.
Okay, imagine you are considered a criminal for loving someone. Even worse, you could have death penalty for revealing your own identity. In 2013, the Supreme Court of India reinstated Section 377. Now, Section 377 is it criminalizes people who are into consensual same-sex activity, and people from the LGBT community were scared. I was also scared because I identify with the LGBT community. It was during this time that we didn't know what to do, and it almost became like a freedom fight for all of us, and most of the people who were activists from the LGBT community decided to come out and say that we are not a minuscule minority, and even if we are a minuscule minority in a democratic like India, we have the rights that any other individual would have irrespective of what is their status. I decided to do my PhD on the LGBT community because obviously an insider perspective, as well as I wanted to represent the voices that are lost. That is, when we talk about there's no research data, when we talk about LGBT community, when we talk about gender, we always see gender in the binary form of men and women. And interestingly, when I started doing this in my university, there were so many people that came out to me, and we realized that we need a safe space within our university, and we started this informal collective called the Queer Collective. And today our university is one of the universities in the world which has gender neutral hostel, gender neutral toilet, and also gender neutral salutation. And it's a big thing in India that we have achieved as an university. Even despite doing this, we felt that many people were not coming out within the university because of the spillover effect, because even if the university is a safe space, the society is not as safe as the university is or as inclusive as the university is. So we started this initiative called Ungender, where we started giving gender sensitivity training for free in the cities of Mumbai, Delhi and Hyderabad. And so far in the last 2 years, we have reached around 1800 people in the last 2 years. During my work, with the community in my university, or whatever I could do for myself, coming out and establishing my own identity, being proud of who I am, I realized that when we talk about policy, it's not always creating new policies. Sometimes it's also about removing the policies that create divide and removing laws that create divide, like section 377. It's an old law that is creating divide, that does not let me be who I am and represent my voice as I want to be, and have the right to marriage or have kids or just talk about my partner to any other person, like any other heteronormative person would do. And the second thing I realized about is that when we are talking about policies, LGBT community is like never taken into consideration. It's just men and the binary of men and women, which is a very dangerous thing, because the entire society is invisible towards this community when we are formulating policies. So it's not just having new policies, but it's about removing policies that create divide. It's about, you know, reinvestigating the policies that we look in as a gender binary. At the same time, it's about creating conversations that are difficult, conversations that are considered very difficult conversations are considered as tabooed conversations. And it's only when we have safe spaces where we create this conversation, we can actually go beyond this conversation. I do not have many numbers or research to insight, because we have been an invisible community, but today I can say that this platform or any other platform, I want more representation from the LGBT community, especially individuals of color from the LGBT community representing global forums, and not only global forums but also everyday life, like conversations. Because say suppose if you ask your best friend what did you do the weekend, and they say I went out with my girlfriend, I cannot say that I went out with my partner, because otherwise I will be considered a criminal in my own country. So I just want to say that on behalf of the LGBTQ community, I am proud and I am out, and this is who we are, and our voices are here to stay. Thank you.
So I just want to understand a bit more about your how you've emerged as a leader within your community, and particularly a community you've described as invisible.
Right. So basically I had never planned or I myself do not think that I am a leader, neither I had planned that I would be emerging as a leader, but when the 2013 incidents happened, and one of the reasons stated was that we are a minuscule minority, that's why our rights do not matter. So various people started coming out. Obviously there was fear, but then we decided that we have to come out to be visible and say that we do exist, and that's why we started coming out. And once I started coming out, I talked about the research that I'm doing in my PhD about on the LGBT community. Various people within my university came to know that I'm doing this. I became sort of their worldview to know what is happening, the insider perspective of the LGBT community, and that's how like. But I never thought that I wanted to be a leader, but that's how I think it was just a first mover advantage, at least in the space that I was in.
Kunal, do you think that the policy, there should be a universal policy from that should protect the LGBT community, and what would be the top three things in that policy document that you should have in mind?
Right. So there are universal, like United Nations has given has said that LGBT rights should be taken as a priority and should be considered as human right, but 86 countries criminalize homosexuality, 7 countries have death penalty for homosexuality, and these countries are part of the UN bodies and they do not decide to. Even in India we are going to the 5-bench judge right now, the verdict is still going on. Hopefully this year we are hoping that the section would be taken down in India, and what I can say is like it's not about like again having policies, but primarily it's about removing policies, and it's also about like starting this conversation that we can have with people in the sense that we don't talk as a society, we do not talk about sexual orientation, we do not talk about sex. So even a country like US which has equal marriage rights, the hate crime is highest for the LGBT community compared to all the minority in last 15 years. So just having policy does not solve anything. Instead we should have people talking about it, having safe space, and it could be any view, like it's the agenda of a person from the LGBT community is not to convert someone's opinion, but just to have a space. Initially, we should have spaces where we could just have our voices heard and also hear what concerns people have about the community.
So, Kumar, there is a fair degree, the LGBT community itself, how cohesive is it? And how do you bring the variety of people together who necessarily may not always have the same agenda under a common platform?
So we talk a lot about intersectionality, especially when we talk about feminist queer theory, and people like I identify as feminist queer in theory, and the worldview that I have is that of radical feminist queer theories. And we talk about intersectionality, but sadly, like as a man, it's so difficult for me to come out. It's even more difficult for women to come out in the society. When you talk, like see India, especially the rural regions, like Mumbai is considered to be the gay capital of India because there are avenues where people could meet or have just meetings. But what about people who are living in rural areas, especially women? I personally know so many men and women who have got married and are in heterosexual relationship just because they cannot come out. So we would like more diversity, but it's also a privilege to come out. That is what I would say, and I feel that I'm privileged to be in this position that I can stand here and fearlessly say that I'm out, and everyone has their own journey. It's not necessary that everyone will come out, but we'd like more diversity within the community as well, but this is how it is as of now.
So one of the issues that we often see is somebody like you, who on the face of it, the appearance of it looks no different from anybody else, and then the variety of people who in sense wish to differentiate themselves by appearance, and oftentimes they're discriminated against because of the way they appear. How do you propose to address that issue?
Right. So basically when we study about gender, we only mostly talk about the biological gender, but gender also comprises of gender role, gender identity and sexual orientation. That's how I see gender as a social construct as. And when an individual is not following the general role or identity assigned by the larger normative society, it becomes a problem for discrimination by the society to the individual. So what you are talking about is being visibly queer. For someone like me, I'm also, like when I say that I identify as queer, most people will think that I'm gay, but I'm not. I identify as bisexual. Again, that's a stereotype that if a man is saying that they are talking about LGBT rights, then they have to be gay. So that's also a misconception, but there are many misconceptions. Like people are visibly queer, they have certain kind of attributes, their hand or body language is in a certain way. So, but then obviously they may or may not belong to the community, but then definitely they are discriminated. Anyone who does not belong in the gender category that the normative society subscribes is, I think, discriminated largely.
Our next speaker is Neha Upadhyay.
Namaskar everyone. Thank you for having me here and for giving me the opportunity to participate in the Future Leaders Connect. Thank you British Council for this opportunity once again, and the lovely students of Shiv Nadar University who are still here at 7 o'clock listening to all of us. My name is Neha Upadhyay. I run a social enterprise called Guna. We work in Leh, Ladakh and Sikkim with approximately 850 rural women farmers, and we make adequate use of solar technology for ecological agricultural practices. We have distributed about 70 solar low-cost portable, mobile and women-friendly solar cookers and solar dryers for efficient post-harvest management of organic produce. This has immensely benefited our farmers because organic farmers spend about 4 to 5 hours more on the field as compared to industrial and regular farmers. This also had an impact from stopping children dropping out of school, as our farmers, who are mostly women, spent more time with their children. Okay, so I have a question. I'm going to make it interactive. So when we say farmer, what is the image that pops up in your mind? Is it a man or a woman, like in the south, in the north? Cool. See, that's the bitter reality. So I'll share a statistic by United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization that in India, on 1 hectare of farmland, a woman farmer spends 3,485 hours, a male farmer spends about 1,212 hours, and a pair of bullocks spend 864 hours. So the contribution of a woman on 1 hectare of land in a week in India is more than that of the male farmer and a pair of bullocks combined. Along with that, she has to do household chores and, you know, look after her family. So this is the kind of strain that she goes through. And there is no mention of a woman farmer in our policy texts. I have mediated dialogue with Niti Aayog, as my organization is partners with Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, UNDP, Global Environment Facility, for our women farmers to have better health facilities and for their role to be highlighted in agriculture. It's such a stereotype. When we go down south, even on billboards, there will be a man in a lungi. In the north, a farmer is a man on a tractor with a turban. Even in America, it's a man with boots and a cowboy hat. But actually, all the work on the field is done by women. And in India and most of the developing countries, and sometimes even in the Western countries. In Ladakh, the village that I work in is 15,000 feet above sea level. It's towards Kargil, where there is always some sort of tension. There has been international water treaty where river Indus is allowed to flow from China and flow to Pakistan, but the villagers of Takmakchik have no access to the water. This year, we solved the issue of water crisis as the district magistrate and superintendent of police of Leh are both women, and my NGO along with them were really able to get an engineer from Delhi to fix the problem and mediate with United Nations for the International Water Treaty to ease down their restrictions on the village of Kashmir, because flowing river knows no boundaries. Flowing river doesn't belong to China, Pakistan, or India or Kashmir or whatever. From this village, we get about 18 metric quintal tons of organic apricots that are dried using solar dryers, which reduce up to 536 kilograms of liquefied petroleum gas emissions as measured by our partners Global Environment Facility. In India, there's a big wave of going solar and going organic, but in our budgets, in our policies, solar systems for ecological agriculture and food grown by women are missing. This is the policy change that I would like to initiate, and I have conducted information dissemination workshops and trained trainers in villages of Ladakh and Sikkim and instilled concepts of ecological agriculture and solar system and low cost portable mobile and women friendly solar systems for our Indian women farmers. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Neha, is there a particular reason why you chose Ladakh, or is it just the height, or is it more than that? Because there are other regions in India also which would have similar problems. So, and how do you connect the women farmer issue with a rural development issue?
Yeah.
And is there an implication there? Have you seen an implication with the people you have been working with, and what is the implication like?
Sure. So going back to your first question, I have been born and raised in Delhi, and I am educated from England. I even won Social Impact in India by the British Council last year, and I really strongly believe in the power of women and in challenge. And this is something that I learned from my father. My father said, don't do anything easy, always do something difficult. And Leh, I found Ladakh, very few people and very few women who would actually leave the comforts of Delhi and Mumbai and work in such difficult regions. Most women NGOs working with women farmers were working in Haryana, Punjab, which were just 2 hours away. And I wanted challenge, and I wanted to be around strong women. Ladakh and Sikkim both have matriarchal societies, and it's been we've been working together for almost 5 years now, and those are the two reasons that I'm in those regions. Secondly, for implication, I think it's the mindset of the village. You know, they really respect women, and I mean it. I'm from Delhi, so. And I can just tell the difference. They really respect women. They really respect our intuitive native wisdom. So, and that's the reason why the district magistrate and superintendent of police in Leh are women. You know, and when we created our women self-help groups, it was actually the men who were involved in transportation, logistics, and training, who were very supportive. Who were very supportive. They said, no, it's these women farmers, they know more about food, they know more about growing, and we should really take their knowledge into being. And so much so, initially when I started working, when I didn't have the support of the ministry or UNDP, I was going alone and doing everything peacefully and in a safe manner, and while everyone at home would get worried, where is she going in Kashmir and Kargil alone? So I was like, no, it's no problem. India is not so scary, and there are societies and tribes that really respect women.
Just so I can understand, it seems to a degree that you were talking about two policy areas. One is about women farmers recognition, and others on solar energy.
Yes.
Are you forced to prioritize in some way? Which comes first for you?
It's very difficult for me to choose and prioritize, because India is a sunny land. We get 250 days of sunshine, and we should be ashamed of the underutilization of solar energy, especially in an agrarian economy where women are growing the food. However, going by what the students and all of you replied, everybody thinks a farmer is a man. It's the most politicized concept. So while it's again very difficult to choose, but I would like to present it in an interlinked manner, that India being the largest and oldest agricultural society, a woman farmer spends 3,485 hours on 1 hectare of land in 1 week, and there is underutilization of solar energy. And when we combine the agrarian economy, food grown by women, and harness solar energy, we'll be a very strong nation.
Well, very nice. Is there anything specific to the location, or can it be cascaded out to other locations? Do you actually see? No offense, but can it be applied to Haryana and Punjab that you talked about?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Because, sorry.
Yeah, so essentially you're talking about distributing a gadget and then probably training them, but this has to be self-sustained in a way, right? So I think, have you given some thought to that? Because otherwise your policy is actually not closing, I think. So.
So I'll start with your second question first, because our partners, Global Environment Facility, the head of Global Environment Facility was the former finance minister of Japan, and this was her first question. Money, cost, finance, how are we going to sustain it? And I understand all the good. So we, by distribution, we mean those regions get heavy subsidy on solar technology products, and we worked on a model of community contribution. We are hygienically drying and grading apricots from the dryers, for which we've created a value chain. We've connected remote organic farmers to New Delhi, and on our packaging we say organic solar dried products, and if you go to the village, last 3 years they were saying organic apricots, now they've also learned organic and solar. So that's where our sustainability model comes. From the solar cooker, the problem of the time spent on cooking has reduced, because even the men now have started cooking because they have a gadget, and they make rice and breads and biscuits. Sometimes when they have more breads and biscuits, they even sell it in the local market, and it was very, very cheap, and that's our USP. Our solar cooker costs 1,500 rupees. It was designed in New Delhi. Our solar dryer costs 8,500 rupees, again designed by a local scientist called Tashi Namgyal. So we've tried to do everything holistically.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ronak Jain.
Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay, good evening everybody. When we talk about creating a beautiful world, what does it mean? To my mind, it is the holistic development and the progress of humanity and its surroundings to be able to craft a happy and a fulfilling life. This progress has been generally envisioned in the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. At a deeper level, it is not only the socio-economic growth, but also the personal development of a human, which gives him a well-rounded life of about 7, 8, 9 decades. So who's responsible to drive this development? Naturally, all of us are responsible. But what is striking about today's world demography of 7.5 billion people is that we have the largest youth population the history of mankind has ever seen. This phase of life brings with it high motivation, energy, fresh ideas and perspectives, and ambition, and a lot of curiosity. The youth are also diverse across the world, and they have their unique challenges. But whichever part of the world they belong to, they have the potential to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals if strategic investments and contextualized opportunities are provided for them which are streamlined to the goals of the nation. The case becomes even stronger because certain issues like education, employment, technology directly or indirectly impact the growing young population, especially here in India, where about 65% of the population is below the age of 35. And we have a great diversity in youth. So what is the best way we can leverage the potential of youth to drive the development and policy goals? The most effective way, according to me, is by enhancing the engagement of the youth in public life through participation in political processes, policy making, democratic governance, and decision making. Globally, the evidence suggests that the participation of the youth in policy and political sphere has been low, especially through institutionalized mechanisms. Although the advent of the social media and the digital media in the last few years has given a voice to the youth, but how much that actually translates into sustained participation in governance is unclear. So what is the solution? I believe that the policy framework around which youth engagement strategies and action plans should be designed should have 4 key aspects. First, how do you actually increase the political representation of the youth in institutions at all levels? Number 2, how do you actually include youth outside the political system to be a part of it? By making it more rewarding, by making it attractive, so that in the future they are politically active and then they understand the implications of various policy options. Third, how do we create civic engagement and governance platforms which will empower the youth to form informed opinions and views about various development policy areas? Participation in youth parliaments, in fellowships, internships, capacity building sessions, policy exposures are some of the ways. And the tools which the youth can leverage to track the work of the government and parliament. Now, in my endeavor over the last few years, I've tried to implement some of these solutions by leading something called the Legislative Assistance to Members of Parliament Fellowship, the LAM Fellowship, which essentially gives a platform to bright young youth to learn public policy making by working with a member of parliament and by contributing to policy making at the highest level. I've also created some websites, one website and social and online platforms which allows the youth to track the work of their elected representative and also to understand certain legislation and policies. Which brings me to the final question. How will the youth be able to do all of these things? How will you be able to do all of these things? It is only possible if you're fit, if you're healthy, both physically and mentally. Now, what I offer now is a policy option where the policy around education systems, around health and policy should be redesigned to not only include modules which help in building knowledge-based and intellectual capacity, but which also help in building character, personality, and strengthening the emotional quotient in today's complex world. Modules around yoga, meditation, teamwork, stress and conflict management, value education are some of the ways. Hence, once the youth crosses the age of adolescence, he will not only be a well-rounded, productive individual, but also an agent of peace, prosperity, and happiness to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. How do you get the youth voice structurally recognised within a kind of parliamentary system? So going to one of the questions from the audience, they talk about no retirement age for MPs and how that hinders the admission of youth into the parliamentary structures. How would you undo some of that?
Yeah, so I think traditionally the only two ways to enter the public life was either through political participation, joining political party, or by giving a the civil services examination. But today, I think to be able to be a member of parliament in India, there are certain notions which we have. First, that you have to be, either a dynast, or you have to have the muscle power, the financial power, or you have to have some kind of a, exposure to the political class from your childhood. But today the things are changing, and this is what we have tried to do in our in my endeavor, where the first level of interaction to the policy making is to understanding the policy at the highest level, and then we can get down to national level, state level, and then the grassroots level. The first, as I pointed out in my speech, was the first thing is to actually what are the mechanisms which help youth understand the policies which exist in India and what are its policy implications. So enough platforms have to be provided for them to get exposure to policy making and to govern it through internships, fellowships, and all of these things. And after that, if they think that this is the area I want to get into, I have to enter the political system, then they have a better chance of getting into the system by actually pitching policies to the political system and being a part of the political class.
And so it sounds to me from your current work that you run almost your own version of Future Leaders Connect. So if you were to be successful, how would you envision relaying what you take from your experience in the UK back into your own organisation?
Correct. So I think again, if I am fortunate to go to be a part of the Future Leaders Connect's program in the UK, then whatever I learn, first of all, we have something in our office called the Coffee with Conversation, but essentially where we invite an external person to come and speak to us about various, maybe from different walk of life. So first thing my thing would be to actually discuss and brief and do a small presentation for my team itself, and then through whatever connections my organization has been able to make in the policy space and with other stakeholders, academia, industry, or the political class, I would figure out a mechanism which basically has a room full of people who are influencers in their own way. So somebody from an industry person, somebody from a political class, that may not happen like as a separate thing, but maybe we can combine it with some of the sessions which we do in our political.
So Ronak, what changes? How has your involvement with LAMP changed it?
Okay, so my involvement with LAMP, how it has changes, I think over the years, since when I have joined it, the quality of applications have been better over the years, and also in the last few years, the direct impact, because a lot of the times the fellow works with a member of parliament, and all the work is at the background, and nothing actually gets discussed in parliament. But there have been times when I have intervened, and when the policy workshops have been useful for the fellows, and certain tangible outcomes have happened that may not be directly because of me, but I have been a key part of that. For example, but one of my LAM fellows was working on the sanitary napkin to remove taxes from that. And she met the finance minister for that, and over the years, when she passed out of the fellowship, she continued to work with a member of parliament for some time. And that actually helped in, that actually in the few days back, the taxes have been removed. So that is one of the successful outcomes. My role has been over the past 3 years to coordinate that entire fellowship to give that person the best experience. And once you empower the fellow, he or she himself is able to, bring about better governance and better contribution to policy making to the member of parliament.
So thank you, Ronak. Just to say that as soon as the last speaker finishes, we'll have a round where you can vote for the person that you want to nominate from the audience choice. So please do stay and participate in that voting round. And we do have teas and refreshments afterwards for all of you all. So if that's an inducement to listen to our last speaker and give her a hand, I'm happy for you to ride. So now we have Rishika Das Roy is our last speaker.
Imagine you're at a dinner party or any party and someone talks to you about climate change and you say annual average temperatures in South Asia are projected to increase 1.6 degree to 2.26 Celsius. The magnitude of the projected temperature increases is larger than the uncertainty. This is going to be deliberated on the UNFCCC CMP 24 CMA 1. That's exactly the problem with climate change. We're either thinking Leonardo DiCaprio, a polar bear, or data and jargon that necessarily doesn't mean anything to anyone who's implementing things on the ground. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rishika Das Roy, and my core problem that I can or I think I can solve with public policy is mainstreaming of climate change. So what exactly is mainstreaming? It's ensuring that climate change as an issue is mainstreamed into more development sector budgets, plans and processes. It's actually befitting that I'm the last speaker speaking today because what I'm trying to talk about actually cuts across everything we've heard. So energy, food, water, urbanization, the systems that we're looking at, it's all going to be impacted by climate change. I know all of you know about the doomsday scenarios, everything. I understand that this is a very woke audience, but what I'd like to focus on is that last month the World Bank came up with a report which said that India is going to lose 2.8% of its GDP and it's going to cause climate hotspots. And 600 million people are going to be living in these climate hotspots. So when we start thinking 600 million people, what that data does is it gives us a nameless, faceless persona. That's why I want to add that we at Shiv Nadar University today are part of that climate hotspot. You would think that mainstreaming climate change into the development agenda should have already happened by now. We did have the opportunity, but that is an opportunity we've missed, both financially as well as temporally. Why? With Swachh Bharat Mission, everyone's heard of Swachh Bharat Mission? With Swachh Bharat Mission, we had the opportunity to bring in systems level thinking. We could have looked at groundwater, drainage, solid waste management, as well as created actual resilient systems that flood-proof cities. But we didn't. We indiscriminately built toilets, cutting culverts and drains wherever we could. The same thing happened with smart cities. Though a former speaker already spoke about urbanization, so I'm not going to go into that. But the problem with smart cities is we had the chance to shape a corpus of $10 billion of our own government's money. And now, I'm not sure, but media tells me that we've been building multi-level parking systems. I'm sure Devashish will be better person to answer what we've done with Smart City Corpus, but multi-level parking systems is where it is at. There are 18 problems with mainstreaming climate change. I'm not going to go into all 18. I'm going to go into 2 problems which I feel that I can do something about. I've been working with 6 state governments, and there is a policy document called State Action Plan on Climate Change, which is a beautifully spirally bound, printed, glossy document. No bureaucrat ever looks at it. Why? Because nobody actually wants to talk about climate change, and that's the core problem that we're getting at. How can we solve this problem? By creating sectoral entry points. So if you want to go to a government and tell them, hey, do something about climate change, they don't have an incentive to do anything about it. A, because the electorate, which is us, isn't asking for a solution. B, the bureaucrat or the policy maker in position has to invest now to see benefits or reap benefits of his investment in 2030. So the cost benefit for him is beyond his policy or electoral cycle. So if any rational person would sort of couch his inaction against this fact. So what can we do? Find sectoral entry points. And this is something that I've already done with the governments of, say, Maharashtra, Bihar, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, where, for example, the Chief Minister of Bihar had a huge problem with Kosi flooding annually. And the problem was silt. And we had the challenge of making silt commercially viable. And what we did is we didn't talk about climate change first. We positioned different sectoral angles so that policymakers can understand what climate change is all about. The second problem is interdepartmental tu-tu mein. The minute people hear climate change, they're like, nahi, climate change walo ke paas jaiye, hamare paas kyun aaye? They don't see the cross-sectoral linkages between water, agriculture, food, urbanization. So that systems level thinking is missing. And with that, since that was my bell to end, I'd like to conclude by saying, if we want to mainstream, we need to remember two things. One, we need to know how to communicate to the right audience. We need to communicate the right incentive to the right audience. And more importantly, we need to create an enabling network, which includes you, me, civil society, NGOs, influencers, to get climate change mainstreamed into the development agenda. Thank you.
You seem to be suggesting that smart cities, urbanization, and climate change, mainstreaming of climate change is an either or kind of a situation. So
no, I'm so sorry. Then I must have made a terrible talk because I was actually suggesting the opposite. I was saying that instead of looking at it as buckets of urbanization, climate change, agriculture, we need to add in a climate change lens through all of the sectors.
Okay. Okay.
So, we have a question there. It says, when Paris Accords were a voluntary treaty, how do you force the government to have policy change? Right? So, how do you respond to that?
That's actually a great question. And I was actually the person typing that question because that was me. I was all about forcing the government to do something, and the government should act on climate change and India should lead the way. And that's when I realized, when you become a part of the system and when you work with policymakers, you realize how slow and imperceptible that process is. So it's not always about forcing as much as it is about influencing. And that's the task that I have as a future leader, to work with governments. Because anyone who's worked with governments will know that even if there is civil society pressure, it tantamounts to nothing till all levers of the government, right from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top, start moving in cohesion.
I'm going to interpret one of the statements from an audience member, and that's just about, what do you do when actually there are some very vocal, global, loud voices that are saying climate change doesn't exist?
I'm sure all of us know who that one particular global voice is, and but I'm sure that I think all of the age of denying climate change is over. So I mean, if you really want to side with voices or believe voices, that's a part of the communication challenge. That means we as practitioners have not done our jobs well enough, and that gives me scope to work with the sectoral linkages that I was talking to you. Because in India, if we talk about climate change, it means nothing. So if I'm talking to you, you can see it in terms of Uber surge pricing when it rains in Delhi. The system goes into shock, the demand and supply is skewed, and then the system reacts. If I want to explain it to an audience in, say, Chhattisgarh, in Korba or Vidarbha in Maharashtra, I'm going to explain it to him through Roti Kapda Makan. So So similarly, I'm going to talk to, say, a certain person who we're not naming currently. If he still denies climate change, or large political leaders still deny climate change, there are people in his own country that is for civil society in that country to take up, which they have. And even if US pulls out of the Paris Accords, which it has, there is enough federal structures in place. For example, the Mayor's Compact in California still is a treaty to the Paris Accords. So it opens up new spaces of subnational governance, and it gives more power at the federal structure to do something.
Very nice. Actually, the point I wanted to make is that it's a very complex one, so my question may take really long. So I'll just move quickly. You know, you have broken it down very nicely to say just now what you've spoken is the micro level thing for every state. And your thrust of your proposal was actually micro level, breaking it down to individuals like us. Sometimes it leads to an oversimplification for a problem of this nature, and that's where I would consider a failure of the policy that you started out with. So any hurdle that you have faced and how you have overcome this, because simplification has this problem, oversimplification of a very complex problem.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, and I actually have a great example. So I work with, as I mentioned, I work with 6 state level governments. In this case, I'm not going to say which one I was working with, but there were 3 departments I was working with, and none of them would talk to each other. So I can actually name the departments: irrigation, renewables, energy, and agriculture, and none of these departments seem to be talking to each other for whatever reasons. And the Secretary of Renewables said, "Oh, you're talking about climate change? Great, let's set up solar irrigation pumps. Let's set it up. Solar is a fantastic idea, let's go ahead with it," without actually talking to climate change experts. So he oversimplified what he heard, went with the direct message. The problem was, you actually if you make energy for an irrigation system free, you disincentivize a farmer from conserving water. Now that electricity has become free, he is drawing groundwater even more rapidly. And what that does is it makes the groundwater level fall. So in the long term, you've actually increased his vulnerability to climate change, because he's now prone to drought, which he might not have been prone to before, which is something we call maladaptation. So oversimplification leads to maladaptation, and which is why mainstreaming is so important, because if all the departments are not on the same page and they're not talking to each other, and honestly they're just across the corridor from each other. I mean, one cabin, the next cabin.
So thank you to all the speakers. We're going to send the judges off to huddle around, and in the meanwhile, my colleague's going to bring on the voting slide so that you all get an option. So, Tom, will you lead away to the, Vishu. Yes, Vishu's got there. She's going to lead you away. Yeah. So you can only see the number of people voting. You won't be able to see the results coming up. It's here. So we've got 8 people who've put in their votes. And we're going to take down the slides, or you will keep it for a while. But in the meanwhile, we'll tell you what's going to happen now. I have the names here of some people who asked question. I really got worried in the last slide because I thought I had to give Donald Trump a mug. But luckily we had Harshvardhan who put his name in. So that kind of saved the day for me. In the meanwhile, we've got a little corporate video for you to show you what the British Council does, because we've spoken a lot, but we haven't actually got around to talking about what the British Council does. So in a little while from now, we're just going to take 2 minutes, and then we'll play the corporate video. I'll tell you a bit about what we're going to do. Also, I'm just going to call out the names of people who I have here. So is there one Mr. Tevatia? Is he still here? No? Okay. Do we have Pankaj, ME, 4th year? Yes, please. Do you want to come and take one of the seats here so that we can call you out quickly? Come here, please. Yeah. Then we have Anant. Is Anant here? No. Yeah, you're there? Okay, brilliant. Okay. Do we have Achintya? Achintya? Yeah?
There is a confusion. People want to correlate the names and faces once more while they vote.
Okay. Do you want to come and say your names here, people? Yeah. Do you want to come up here on stage? All of you? Because they want to look at the faces. They can't see the... Do you want to get that up?
Yeah, you. Yes.
They have to look at you. They can't relate the face with the name because they have seen you only for 10 minutes in their lives, Asha. Then go on together. Can you see the names over here? This is an order, right? Yeah. They can see it in your mobile phones. You can see the names clearly. So yeah, it's okay. You want to say your names, please, Asha?
I'm Neha Upadhyay. I run Exactly. My name is Dharini Suresh, and I'm the one who spoke for menstruation.
My name is Devashish. I spoke about urbanization, option number 3.
I'm Gaurav Somanshi. I spoke on identity, privacy, and emerging technologies like blockchain.
Hi, my name is Kumar K. Jha. I spoke on LGBT rights.
Hi, my name is Ron Jain. I spoke about youth engagement in policy and political sphere.
Hi everyone, Rishika, I was the last speaker speaking on climate change. I hope you still remember this. That was like 5 seconds ago.
So thank you and one round of applause. It's just that they're working and they've heard so people for so long and they're very serious. Yeah. Very serious. That's why I don't want to vote for them. Okay. So you can see the rapidly rising votes on the side. It's exciting. To tell you that it's going to be remote voting as well. So if you have, our panelists have followers, leaders always have to have followers, right? So there's going to be some of that as well. So if you're wondering how the numbers have increased beyond the audience here today, it's beyond this room as well. So people have been listening in. And it's been exciting. But what we're going to listen to now, and you can see the names on your mobile phone, so even if this slide is not up there, on the mobile phones they will continue to remain visible. And I'm going to request the little video to come on. Go for it. So obviously, you know, this is our favorite movie of all. You know, we love watching this video as British Council. But to tell you a little bit about what British Council does in India, we have 8 libraries in the cities of Delhi, Chandigarh, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, Ahmedabad, and Chennai. So those are our offices. But today, those of you who are on our list, our panel members and list of those who get question prizes, you can actually go onto our digital and online library. So we'll be gifting you an online library membership. So you'll get a little bit more than a mug because our online library membership actually allows you access to lots and lots of books. It's got access to indie flicks, it's got access to journals, textbooks, it's got lots of entertainment, theatre and drama. So I'm sure that it'll really be exciting for all of, you know, those of you who get it, but all of you can get it on a subscription. So that's what's going to be the prize for that. So that's a lucky one for everybody. Also, besides our libraries, you may be aware that we have English language teaching, which happens in different centers. So our offices have English language teaching courses, and you know that we are one of the major organization that actually conducts the IELTS examination. So if you're planning to go abroad, and if you want to take an IELTS exams, which is compulsory for many as a proof of your language, whether you're going to work or you're going to study, British Council conducts loads and loads and loads of these exams. It has lots and lots of free resources which you can try out on your mobile phones at any given point of time. So one of the exciting things that we have, a product is called Mix the Body. If you do Mix the Body, it's on choreography and dance, and it allows you to pick moves, musicians, and choreograph your own piece. You can also get onto your phones and look at a site called the English Channel, which gives ways for mobile technology to bring English language learning, and it's completely free. So if you want to go on and try that, have a look at that, and you can then go on and experiment with many of the other resources. If you have younger brothers and sisters, younger children, you know, who would like to learn English language, there's lots and lots of fun and games available on mobile technology for that. So do visit our physical library if I know it's going to be a long way from Shivnadar, but if you're in CP and would like to come and visit us, we also have lots and lots of our arts and cultural programs. And in November and February each year, so this year on 24th November, we have the Education UK exhibition at our premises, and you can come in. And if you would like to meet representatives of UK universities, that would be a good time to come and visit us. So do drop in and say hello to us, visit our library, and take a look at the facilities that are available over there. If you have any questions to me, and we don't have the fancy Mentimeter, but you can even ask me a direct question on the British Council. So if you're interested in anything, to learn anything about that, I'm happy to take questions. Yeah? Beg your pardon? The online library, well, the winners over here get it for free. Otherwise, it costs 1,400 rupees for an annual subscription. But if you think about it, it has got magazines like The Economist, you know, and a lot of the lifestyle magazines, which cost a lot. You know, if you take a subscription of that amount, it allows you access to all of that free. There's access to things like indie flicks, a lot of entertainment, lot of theatre, drama, and documentary. So if you're going to look for research journals, are there as well. So in that respect, for the money that it costs, it's actually quite a good deal. But luckily for the winners today, it's free. Yeah. So can I quickly go over the winners once again? It's Mr. Tevtia. Who's that? Do we have the person? Say, Mr. Tevtia. He was the first one who asked us the question. No, he's probably left. Okay. Pankaj is here, right? Pankaj? Yeah, okay. Do we have Anant? Yes, you're there. Achintya? No? You're there, Achintya? No? Okay. Rishabh Varma? Rishabh Varma is there? Yeah, okay. Harsh? Yeah? Yeah. Do you want to come forward? Because, yes, please. And do you have Harshvardhan? First, same. So you used Harsh once? Okay. Yeah. Okay, 160 words. Yeah, great. So we'll just wait. I'm sure you want to join the main part of the prize distribution and you don't want your mugs from me, so we'll wait. But the one thing I can request you to do is if you can quickly go over to Abhishek and give him your... Abhishek, do you have those cards for this thing? To give you an library membership, we need your mobile details and your name because it has to be by person. For all the other people, there are flyers and leaflets available on the British Council Teaching Centre and libraries available. Do collect them when you're leaving, when you go for your refreshments. We'd look forward to that. You have to collect those cards. Take it to them. So we've had 406 votes, as you can see. So fantastic amount of participation. Yes. So you wouldn't imagine so many people all over would be interested, right? And it's growing every minute it's on. So you have 406 people voting, 410 now, 24. So you can see that. So I'm just requesting my colleague Abhishek to bring the flyers round for you all so that you can take a look at it while you're waiting. Hit the 500 mark in votes. How? Because everyone can WhatsApp that. The live stream is just in YouTube. Yeah. There are 100 people max. Yeah, but then you just need the, you don't need that thing. You just need to give your network. Right. So we have, you'll be pleased to know, Tom, 522 votes come. How is the question? That's the question that everyone, you can remotely vote. We have our global teams voting for it as well. So, yes, still going. That's absolutely because leaders need followers. So we really do have leaders here. So we're going to let this go for just 1 minute and we'll stop it and take a vote. So that's
people actually signing in and doing something. Oh.
Okay.
Are you sure you can't vote multiple times?
Yeah,
I tried. You tried.
Okay, so we're going to have this real moment when we're going to see who the winner is. I'm going to request Abhishek to hit the show the winner button. And I'm nervous. So, do you want to come, Tom? Okay. And say good day. Yeah.
Should we do it here? Many congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
And the tray? No. Sorry, we can't afford that. Well done again.
That's really nice stuff.
Now the other winners are, and these are by the panelists who have spent some time deliberating on this. So we have Gaurav Somvanshi. And can I request Dr. Rupamanjari Ghosh to come and give away the prize? Come on stage. The next finalist is Dharini. Can I request Professor Partha Mukhopadhyay to come and give away the prize to her? Professor Mukhopadhyay, can we ask you to say a few words because you haven't spoken? Can you share? Okay. All right. Okay, and the last winner for the day is Kunal Kumar Jha. Sunny, can I ask Mr. Sunny Sen to please give away the... Mr. Sen, would you like to say something? Are you okay? Then I'm just going to request Tom to come and close it. For the last time, say thank you to our wonderful audience. And come forward for a group. Yeah, and also, okay, I couldn't have forgotten this. You have another job, Tom, which is to give certificates to our other finalists as well. Yeah, see? Yeah. Please come forward, and then we just give the certificates, and then you can say 2 words. Yeah.
Dakshita.
Devashish.
The first. Devashish third. Dakshita. Neha Upadhyay. Ronak Jain. Asha Jomis.
Okay. Well, I just want to say a huge thank you. It was a real privilege, genuinely, to be on the panel today and to be pretty bowled over by 9 astonishing young people. We were given 8 minutes to make a decision, and I kept being shown the clock of 13 minutes, 14 minutes. It really was very, very tough. And I think it's testament to how well everyone did and how compelling a case so many people made that we had. Well, it's gone now. 650 odd votes for who was going to win the right to go to the UK. So a serious congratulations to the 4 triumphant finalists, but a big well done as well to the other 5 for presenting yourself and the policy areas that are so important so well. Thank you so much, everyone.
So we're not going to let you go yet, Tom, because you have this one last job. Okay. And that's to give away the prizes to those who ask the questions. So can I request Pankaj, Anant, Achintya, Rishabh, Harsh to come forward. So big question. And this is also an acknowledgement of what a wonderful audience all of you have been. We are going to share the questions with the participants so that it helps them prepare for their next rounds that they will do. And there's been a lot of valuable inputs from the audience. Thanks a lot. So for everyone else, there's teas and coffees and refreshments. Please do go for that and enjoy yourself. For the winners and the finalists, can we have a group photo here? So, yeah. And the panel members as well. Please do come for records and so that we remember what a great day it's been with all of you.